came here to Bolton in 2012. So I've been here for 10 years this year, 13 years overall in the sector. And I just love it here. I cannot imagine working anywhere else. I just love our ambitions around social mobility and the role that I get to play in delivering them. So what was a sort of unknown quantity within my childhood really has sparked a passion that's driven my career, I would say.
Welcome to the Independent School Podcast. Thinking and acting strategically is the key to both securing the future of your school and helping to build a more equal and just world. My name's Juliette Corbett. I'm a consultant, speaker and facilitator specialising in helping independent schools. In this podcast, I translate tried and tested strategy and fundraising techniques into a language that works for schools. So if you're a senior leader in a private school and you want your daily work to feel less exhausting and more strategic, and if you want once more to feel the joy of making the world a better place through education, then you're in the right place. Welcome, and let's get started on this week's episode. Hello and welcome to this week's episode, where I'm really pleased to be sharing with you a conversation that I've had with Laura Firth, Director of Development and Alumni Relations for Bolton School. And Laura and I in this week's episode dive into the importance of stewardship. So this is all about how you treat your donors after they've made a gift, how you say thank you, how you involve them in your school, how you communicate the impact of their donation back to them. And what's really important is understanding that this isn't just something you do once after a donation has been received. It's a whole process that you go through, a relationship that you build with your donors. And the really exciting part of what Laura and I share with you in our conversation today is that this isn't just a kind of a bolt-on, obviously we want to be polite, so we want to say thank you and therefore we steward our donors. This is much more integral to a really mature development office strategy. And actually the way that Laura looks at things, actually stewardship is sort of one of the central backbones of that development office strategy. And I think that one of the exciting things that we share today is actually this is a really easy way into fundraising. So if you're listening to this episode and you're not a professional fundraiser, maybe you're on a board of governors for a school or senior leadership position or another part of the school community which isn't directly involved in fundraising, understanding stewardship and the power of strategic stewardship is a really nice sort of easy way into the world of fundraising. So whether you're a really experienced development professional or coming to fundraising slightly anew, I really recommend this conversation that I've had with Laura. So before we dive into that conversation, a little bit more about Laura Firth. So as I mentioned, she's Director of Development and Alumni Relations at Bolton School. She has a first-class degree in English and an MA in English Studies from the University of Manchester. She's worked in educational development for the past 13 years, spending 3 years at Withington Girls' School during the successful completion of their bursary appeal before joining Bolton School in 2012. In August 2018, Laura led on the successful completion of the 100 campaign for Bolton School bursaries, which raised £5 million in 4 years as part of the school's long-term strategy of building a bursary endowment fund capable of replicating the needs-blind access that was enjoyed during the direct grant era. The 100 campaign was named as IDPE's Fundraising Campaign of the Year at their June 2019 Schools Development Awards. Laura's interests include major donor fundraising, donor stewardship and communications, both on and offline. She served as an IDPE Regional Vice President from 2013 to 2016, and then as the 2019 to 21 IDPE Conference Co-Chair. So she has a depth of experience within this area, a real passion for bursaries, which is where Bolton School is focusing its development activity. And I'm delighted to be sharing this conversation with you today. So many people have told me that this podcast helps them, which is great because helping people is why I create these weekly episodes. And I also hear from lots of people who need a bit more support. For those schools, I facilitate strategy away days for governors and leadership teams. I guide heads and chairs of governors through the creation and implementation of new strategic plans. And I lead regular one-to-one strategy advice calls with heads and directors of development. And the best part of my job is hearing from the people I work with that they're clearer about what to prioritise day to day. They're better able to lead change in their schools, and they feel happier and more confident that they're making good strategic decisions. So anytime that you feel like you need a bit of extra help, just drop me a message so we can chat. You'll find my contact details at www.consultjuliet.co.uk. So let's dive into my conversation with Laura Firth. So hello, Laura, and welcome to the Independent School Podcast.
Hi, Juliet. Thank you so much for having me today on this lovely sunshine day.
It is. I hope it's sunshiny when you're listening to it, wherever you're listening to this. So Laura, first of all, I love to hear about where people's passion for education comes from. Working in the education sector, whether you're in the teaching side, the fundraising, the leadership side, it's not easy. This isn't the easy job to be going for. So there must be a reason that we're tenaciously pushing ourselves forward to make education front and centre of the way that we're changing society. So where did that passion come from for you?
So I grew up in Preston, which is quite close actually to Bolton. And I think, incidentally, that my Lancashire accent definitely helps me to build rapport with our donors, who that's a really familiar sound to them from their childhood. I went to school, I was educated in the state sector, and I was the first to go to university in my family. So there's definitely that social mobility, although obviously it was unknown to me at the time, angle within my life and my experience. After graduation, I worked in the affordable housing sector for a few years. And then my first role in development was actually at Withington Girls' School, all girls' day school in Manchester. And I was part of the development team, and we were fundraising to expand their bursary scheme. And I just loved it because it really chimed with my values, my the sense of aspiration and hard work that my parents had instilled in me. And it just felt super powerful to be able to give children the opportunity to have more chances in their life, you know, and to make sure that their ambitions and their achievements matched their talents. So I was there about 3 years, and then I came here to Bolton in 2012. So I've been here for 10 years this year, 13 years overall in the sector. And I just love it here. I cannot imagine working anywhere else. I just love our ambitions around social mobility and the role that I get to play in delivering them. So what was a sort of unknown quantity within my childhood really has sparked a passion that's driven my career, I would say.
Fantastic. And it is that sense, isn't it, that education can unlock opportunities for young people. So in that sense of social mobility, it is a critical component, isn't it?
Absolutely. So here at Bolton School, lots of people know us, but we are an ex-direct grant school. We're ex-assisted places. So the school for generations has been a vehicle for social mobility, both in Bolton and in the surrounding areas of the Northwest. And our bursary fund, our governors had the foresight to start planning that from 92, when they'd expected the Conservatives to lose that election. And then in 97, when Labour came to power, it was established and fundraising commenced straight away. So that strategic decision on their behalf, that foresight, has really stood us in good stead. I thank my lucky stars for that every day. And they established our bursary fund from the outset as an endowment style fund, which is of huge value to our fundraising and stewardship, and has meant that we have been able to grow that bursary fund over the past 25 years so substantially. So now, you know, 1 in 5 of the children here have support, but we find our donor pool are primarily alumni, particularly those former direct grant recipients, because they see the benefit their place here had on them, and they want to give that opportunity to the next generation of Boltonians. It's just such a privilege. It's lovely work to be doing, isn't it?
It is, it absolutely is. And that sense of it passing through the generations as well. I think alumni giving is such a beautiful thing, because you can see how it passes from one generation of people to the next, and the only connection is the school community and the school family, if you like. It's absolutely fantastic. So obviously I know Bolton School's been doing the bursaries fundraising for some time. I love the idea that actually you're now reaping the benefits of the forward-thinking strategic thought that went on during the 1990s to be ready for that direct grant kind of change in policy from government. So what are your plans for bursaries going forward? What are you working on at the moment, the kind of aspirations for the next few years?
Sure. So our ambition is to reach 1 in 3 recipients having a bursary funded place. And that's all the way from 100% places, down to lower levels of support, but by 2030, so within the next 8 years. And then eventually that to become completely needs blind. We've taken 1 in 3 as our goal, because that was the level of access that was enjoyed here at the peak of the direct grant in the 60s and the 70s. So that's our ambition. It's founded sort of on the school's heritage and background, and it should, we think, be achievable.
And do you think when you set out that ambition, you're talking to donors, I think there's sometimes a hesitancy to be, you want to be bold with that ambition, but the thinking that went into setting those targets, was there ever a sense that, you set something that's too ambitious, and then what happens if you don't make it? What sort of process did you go through?
I don't think so, honestly, because the governors have always stewarded the bursary fund so carefully, and the school has income streams into it other than the fundraising work that my team does, that it was always known that was an achievable ambition. Yes, it is an ambition and it's very stretching, but especially given that we've been an endowment from the outset, or in endowment style, sorry, we will be able to achieve it. And it gives you an amazing strength and confidence when you're speaking to donors, because you know that you can communicate, this is an ambition we can achieve if we all work together, and it's wonderful. What I love particularly about that ambition is that we in recent years, we're giving very careful thought to, when we get there, making sure that the bursary places that we're able to offer in addition reach those who would benefit the most, but that they would also, the children are selected based on their character values and the values we want our pupils to leave the school with, in order that they will then amplify the benefit and the opportunity that they've been given for the good of many. So it's that multiplier effect of social mobility, really, that we're very carefully considering, to make sure that those additional places we're going to be adding to the school in the next 8 years go to the right children who are going to make the very best of it. And then also that we make sure those children are given every chance to succeed while they're here and afterwards, taking into account the difference in circumstances and support networks that exist or might exist between bursary recipients and fee-paying pupils.
I think it's the journey that we take those bursary pupils on as well. So it's finding the right people, and there's that kind of outreach recruitment kind of activity there. And it's the journey that you take them on through admissions into their school time, and how you support them during that time, and then as alumni as well, and how you support them there. Have you given much thought to how you're actually ensuring that each of those pupils has a really supportive journey
yes,
as they
absolutely.
go through the school?
So we've been talking in recent years, and I know you've had Philip Britton, our head of foundation, my boss, speak to you earlier this academic year about that approach, and we're really fleshing it out and putting a lot of detailed thought into those 4 stages that you outlined. So that outreach, making sure that we're actively getting out into the communities and reaching individuals where there may be no previous experience of private education, or if it was given any consideration, it would be dismissed as not for the likes of us, sense the inverted commas around that phrase from me, and making sure that they're supported. It's not enough to expect that those bright children might be able to sit the admissions processes in year 6. So doing that outreach from, later on in year 4, and then supporting them through year 5 and year 6. And we've got 2 particular partnership activities at the moment that are doing great work around that, so that those children are prepared for the admissions processes. And then making those admissions processes needs blind. So those character values I was talking about, we've identified 3: drive, respect for others, and curiosity. And centering the bursary admissions processes in particular on assessing for those values and assessing potential, not just current learning levels and cultural capital that children might have. We can't presume that they do, but they will surely have stacks of potential. And then once they're at school, that nuanced pastoral care that's needed. So it's not just provision for extras for uniform and travel and extracurricular activities. That's already in place. We make sure that that's there. But we use our alumni hugely for careers and enrichment activities to make sure that our bursary pupils, that their ambitions reflect their potential, that their horizons are broadened, and that they have role models who speak to them, who say, I was like you, I had a funded place and now I am here and you could be too. And then after our alumni leave, mentoring, again, providing them with role models and networks as they move into higher education and then build their careers, understanding that if they're the first in their family to do so, that's a really daunting prospect. And you need support and encouragement all along the way, not just stopping on the day you receive your A-level results, but afterwards. And it's wonderful that work brings in the alumni engagement side of what my team does, as well as the fundraising. It's just this huge virtuous circle. It's so lovely to be a part of.
Yeah, and I love the way that you've broken it down to those 4 stages, kind of the outreach, the admissions, the pupil care, and then the alumni pastoral care as well. And I think that sometimes when we put a little bit of a framework around these things, they don't experience it that way. They just experience it as their own unique personal journey through the school.
Yes.
But as a school, being able to structure it in that way, and then being able to see how there might be different people, different teams that are responsible for each stage, and making sure that there's handover between those stages, giving it that structure. I think that's the sign that I'm seeing across the sector, actually, of these programs maturing. It's not just about where on earth we're going to find the money. It's now a much more matured approach to, okay, we need the money, but we also need to make sure we've got that finding and that flourishing really taken care of as well.
Absolutely. And I think for donors, it's incredibly reassuring for them as part of a stewardship process to know that we've given careful thought to how their money is going to be used, and we're absolutely making sure it's going to have the greatest impact. That's really reassuring, and also really encouraging to them to consider supporting again. It's great in so many ways.
Absolutely. So that brings us on to stewardship. So I know I've heard you speak really passionately about the importance of stewardship. So how does your approach to stewardship support that work strategically that you've just outlined there? How do you see stewardship fitting into the jigsaw of everything we're trying to achieve?
I think it's in every piece of the jigsaw, and so therefore it's within the whole picture. I mean, for us, stewardship, particularly with major donors, is huge. It takes a large part of my time. Philip and the other heads are very engaged with it too, but we all see it as an absolutely worthwhile investment of that time, because we know the benefits it brings. For us, very few major donors' first gift is the biggest gift, and many of our biggest major donors are repeat donors. So that stewardship process is a really crucial part of encouraging that continuing support through their lifetimes. And it's wonderful to be able to bring them. They feel so close to school as a result. We, for major gifts above a certain level, we employ a linked bursary pupil mechanism. So we have an endowment, obviously, that the fees don't pay, the donation doesn't pay the fees. But what it means is they can see the impact of that gift at that level, and they can hear annually from us, from me or the heads, about how that pupil is progressing. And then it also then gives a natural structure to repeat giving. So, as that child reaches the end of their A-level results, it's a natural opportunity for me to ask again. And often I don't even need to ask. I will just go to them and talk to them about that pupil's progress and where they're going, their next steps after leaving the school. And they'll say, right, Laura, this is what I want to do next. And we had the most amazing example of that at the start of this academic year. I've spoken about this recently at the IDP conference. A gift from an old boy and his wife, John Roberts. They previously supported the bursary fund in 2016. They supported our 100 campaign, and they'd been linked to some bursary recipients for that gift was for 5 years, so up to the end of those pupils' GCSEs. Those pupils completed their year 11 studies last summer, and John came to meet with Philip and I in school, and he shared with us, unprompted, how he and Sally wished to shape their next donation, because I'd been updating them regularly about the impact on the bursary place it had on these 10 lads, and such varied school careers, but all really enjoyed their time, made the most of the opportunities inside and outside the classroom. And so he wanted to replicate and expand the impacts of that with the next gift by creating a partnership between us and a charity called Onside, who it's a youth charity. They have centres all around the country now, and John's very heavily involved. So that resulting gift to the bursary fund will fund 14 100% bursary places. It's 2 a year for 7 years. But the ring fence for young people who were Onside Youth Zone members They get extras funding for the uniform and travel. So John and Sally want to make sure there's no financial obstacles to the child attending the school. And those young people are identified through an outreach project, which we call Flourish, which is working with them through year 5 and year 6. And so we're going into the youth zones, we're talking about the school, and then you've got that community trickle down effect of people understanding that we're here and there are bursary places, and encouraging more and more people to apply. So we ran a pilot scheme last autumn, and 3 pupils from a cohort of 11 are going to be joining us in September. And then we've got another 14 year 5 pupils currently taking part in the next instalment. So none of those children were previously aware of our existence or had families who had considered independent education. And it just shows really the power of stewardship to me, because John and Sally care so deeply about social mobility. They wanted to leverage their giving to have most impact. But through our stewardship, I think they'd seen firsthand the impact it was having on individuals' lives, and also the care that we were taking around that work. So it was such a worthwhile investment as far as I'm concerned. I have a postcard on my wall that just says thank you. It's one we used for the end of our 100 campaign, and we sent it to all our donors, and it's there every day. I have a daily action reminder on my Outlook that says say thank you, because find someone to say thank you to every day, and by doing so you're just going to reap the benefits. It's fantastic work. I love it.
It is, isn't it? We're so lucky to do this kind of work.
I love my job.
And I think the key things that come out of what you've said, that is, it has superb story about the impact of stewardship, and it's really the importance of demonstrating the impact of the donation back to the donor. That's the key part of stewardship. But I think there's also a more a wider impact of doing that stewardship, in that if you're doing it publicly, if you're publicly saying thank you to people, and sometimes you do it privately and sometimes you can do it publicly, then it's creating an opportunity to role model. This is what other people are giving. It's sort of creating an aspirational model for other donors to understand, oh, okay, this is a really exciting charitable cause. I'd like to find out more. And then it may or may not be the right gift for them to make. They may have other priorities, that's fine. But it's just an opportunity, without ever even really asking, to just celebrate to the community and show that role modeling of really major gifts. And I think the fact that it naturally then leads to the next ask, there's almost a sense, I know some development directors have said, like, this idea of preparing for the ask. Actually, if you're cultivating and stewarding it properly, so you often don't need to make the ask. It just naturally comes up in conversation when the time is right.
That is absolutely my experience, and that is how I approach everything. Stewardship is cultivation, is stewardship. It's just all part of a process. And I think I know how privileged I am that we have the bursary fund was established in an endowment structure from the beginning, and it gives me a certain level of freedom. So with certain prospects, often we'll try and involve them in alumni activities as a volunteer, so careers activities, mentoring. And I almost steward them as if they were donors, and just speak really openly and honestly about the bursary fund and our ambitions. And it's just ongoing cultivation. And I absolutely know that at the right time, they will choose to support. And it is just a case of when, really. And I think by encouraging people to give their voluntary support, often they make the decision themselves to then support a cause or the school financially. It's wonderful.
I think what's fascinating about that link between the way that volunteers then start to give financially, I think is really interesting. We kind of do it instinctively. There's a sense that, okay, if someone's willing to volunteer time, they get closer to us as a school, and therefore they're more likely to give. But actually, really interestingly, back when I was doing my MBA dissertation, I was looking at research from CASE, and they were looking at both schools and universities levels, relationships with alumni as volunteers and then as donors. And there was actually empirical evidence within there to show that if people take that journey from reading your things, first of all, so being quite passively just sort of reading things you put out there, might be magazines, social media and so on, then through volunteering, so no gift of money yet, but gift of time and kind of enthusiasm, and then moving on to a financial gift, there was actually empirical evidence to show that journey really works, and taking people on that journey has a greater impact. And I think we all know that instinctively, but it's nice to know there is empirical evidence to back up that approach as well, I think.
Absolutely. And it's just, I keep using this phrase, a virtuous circle, but it really is. And so with our volunteers, we always send a thank you card that we get a pupil to write after they've volunteered their time, even if it's just a Zoom. It takes that pupil 2 minutes to write that, but we include them in our annual donor thank you event. Now we call it a benefactors reception, and we make a point of saying we're giving, so many of you give time, so many of you give money, lots of you give both. We are just so grateful for your service. And it's just, it as you say, it draws them closer to the school, and it really makes them feel part of a direction of travel, and they can see where their gift of time or money or both sits in that wider picture, because we've got that 4-point strategy. So we'll always make clear that you're particularly going to be helping our bursary recipients when you're speaking at this point. And if you had a funded place, please do say that at the beginning, normalize that for the pupils who are watching. It's wonderful. It really is.
Yeah. So we all know that development offices are extremely busy places. So you've got your stewardship activity. Do you have a sense of how that kind of plays a role in the overall development strategy? How do you put all of that together?
Yes. I mean, for us, it's just so firmly embedded that whenever we're thinking of adding something extra, if that makes sense, and our focus is primarily on major gifts. That's all that, we have a good regular giving program. We've got a good number of donors, but the bulk of our fundraising every year comes from major gifts. And that's been a strategic decision that we've gone back to and sense checked regularly, but that we always feel is worth the primary investment of my time, particularly, because it's cost effective. There's everybody can understand why, but when we're thinking about adding things in, so if we're contemplating an appeal, a telephone campaign, whatever, the stewardship and the time it would take to do that afterwards is always a key consideration, because we know that it absolutely stands us in good stead. And anecdotally, we've got lots of examples of where regular stewardship for regular donors has led to really quite significant gifts, or alumni engagement activities, or regular donors, we've been stewarding them really regularly, and then they have become quite significant legators that we didn't know that they were intending to leave a gift. So we know that there are those benefits are tangible, and it's absolutely worth our time. So I would implore people really to think carefully about, how do I want to stewardship? And I think you have to be really realistic. What's going to have the most impact, bearing in mind all the other things that are coming across my desk every day? But I do have to carve out time for that. So certain things for us are absolute non-negotiables. The heads sign every thank you letter when it's the giving report time at Christmas. They hand sign every major donor and legator letter, and loads of the regular donors as well. So they know that time is worth that effort, that the effort that they put in and the time they set aside to do it is worth it. But it does mean that you have to take a decision not to do other things. And I think, life's a set of decisions, isn't it? Or certainly organisational planning, when you've got a workload as big as we all do, is.
And that's the important part of strategy, isn't it? It's deciding what you're not going to do. And
yes.
I think so what you've just mentioned there, so focusing in on major gifts, because we know the return on investment is greater with major gifts. Unless you have a really substantial team, it's almost always the right thing to focus on major gifts. There might be some exceptions. You have to think about it for your school community, but it's a good starting point to at least question around how much time should we be putting into major gifts. One of the things that you said there in passing, which I think is really interesting, so you said, we do regular giving, but it's not the area that I'm focusing most of my time. So it's almost, I suppose the question is what do you think is that base level regular giving that you've needed to put in place to facilitate identifying future major gift prospects, future legators, making sure that those major donors know that you're also asking everyone? What's that kind of baseline regular giving activity that you've put in place?
So again, I absolutely think you're correct, but every school is different. So taking in mind the sort of last 10 years of our fundraising, we completed a capital appeal, which funded the sixth form centre. And then after that, we knew that the focus was going to be on bursaries, bearing in mind that we had this ambition to reach 1 in 3 supported places by 2030. So we had the 100 campaign, which ran from 2014 to 18, which covered the school's centenary. And during that, and immediately preceding that, we had several regular giving. We had 2 telephone campaigns in 2012, 2013, and then we had several direct mail appeals and with email appeals during the 100 campaign. So when we reached that total and closed that campaign in 2018, we very much took a step back and thought, we want to encourage alumni to give their time. We want to focus on major gifts. And we knew that we would come back to a more regular giving approach in the fullness of time. But we almost wanted and took a decision to have a fallow period, if you will. So we talk about bursaries all the time. We ask for support at every alumni event all the time. There's information on the website. There's information we can obviously have chats with people as soon as they're there, but we've deliberately had a bit of a fallow period up until now for these past 4 years, because we wanted to rejuvenate the base, I guess, but also to focus on the major giving. Now we're going to be making appeals annually from next year, focused around, we have a big alumni reunion every 10 years. We invite all the class leavers back, and we're going to be focusing our regular giving appeals around those years, taking into account that the sense of nostalgia will be heightened, talking to them about legacies again at the same time. So for us, we feel that's right, that's natural, that's around. But we've been fundraising for 25 years. And as I say, that endowment structure that was set up from the beginning, it gives us the freedom to pursue that approach. We don't have to make annual appeals to everybody. I feel very lucky to be in that position, but we know, taking into account the character of our alumni, what they're interested in, how often they want to be contacted, that's the best approach for us.
I think that's really important to be careful that you're doing something that's right for your school. Yes. And what you've just described there is clearly fits your school community, but also the time frame and the kind of ebbs and flows that you're creating there. And I think as well that there's sometimes a tendency to see things like giving days and telephone campaigns as the only way to go, when in actual fact they're very time intensive. They're sometimes the right way to go, but being very clear about also how those activities might feed in and support your major gifts work and your stewardship work is really critically important. Because if you are going to go down that route of really investing time and money within your regular giving activity, it needs to support those other major gifts and legacy programs as well. And I wonder if you've had any thoughts. So stewardship, does that help you to develop your case for support as well? There's you talked about virtuous circle. Does that come back to you in terms of getting a sense of what people are interested in and what they'll give to?
Absolutely, because when we start talking about this sort of 4-point approach that we're taking, alumni will often share their stories of where they can see that would have helped them, or where where their direct grant, their recipient place helped them. And so we get their impact stories from when it was government funding. And then that sets, I think, in place a train of thought with them that, gosh, that place I had, it safeguarded my future. It certainly, set me on a trajectory towards success. But then definitely in the past 2 years, I think people have been considering how it's safeguarded the futures of their children and their grandchildren for those early direct grant recipients, and really changed the trajectory of their family's future. And so by speaking to them about our case for support, it implants it in their mind, and by sharing with them what we're doing, they can put themselves in the position of the bursary recipients now, and absolutely then develop a sense of responsibility that they would like to support that new generation of Boltonians.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, it gives you. So I always remember quite early on in my career, another director of development saying, well, the reason they have a really structured stewardship program, they'd gone down the route of giving circles and kind of societies and things, but the reason they really loved it was because it kept them on track. Basically, they were using it almost like an accountability kind of mechanism. So they said it makes us need to collect testimonials from the recipients. It makes us need to really properly articulate the impact that we're having every single year. And that kind of creates a discipline around what we're doing. And I think that's another way that actually stewardship, if you put it really central within your strategy, it forces you to have to collect those testimonials, really understand the impact. And that might be qualitative as well as quantitative data. and it kind of gives you an annual structure of events and so on. Have you found that as well, that it keeps you on track?
Absolutely. That sort of linked bursary mechanism that I spoke about earlier, exactly as you say, I'm then preparing reports on those pupils and then having to present those reports every year. So I'm getting to know individuals and their stories and their career as it develops through the school. And I can speak about their experiences to other donors and to prospects, because I've got all those anecdotal examples. And then it makes us be really rigorous around collecting testimonials from every bursary recipient. We gather it, we're quite systematic around trying to gather as much information about impact as we can, because we know it can be deployed in a variety of ways. And I think also looking at the wider picture, obviously a lot of development offices, alumni engagement is a huge part of their responsibilities. And we all know how all-encompassing that can become, and it sort of can tend to take over. But alumni engagement also really provides opportunities for donor stewardship. Erin Charles at the Perth School has this amazing phrase, development thinking, that she encourages her team to find opportunities in any interaction with people. Be aware of the potential major donors, be aware of the major donors, send them a personal note to invite them to a dinner, ask them to be a mentor. Everybody in the team can be responsible and play a part in stewardship and cultivation.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And then the benefits are just, they can be often unexpected. So with our regular donors, we send a thank you every 2 years, a thank you letter every 2 years. And the wording that we were using in late 2020, so after schools had reopened after the first lockdown, was around how we were absolutely intent on continuing to pursue our ambitions around the bursary fund, because we saw the difference it was making now, and we knew that the demand and the need for those bursary places would only grow. And we sent this one of the 2-year thank yous to a donor who was giving a small amount regularly, monthly, and they sent us in a 5-figure gift by return of post.
Fantastic.
And it's just things like that you just never. Equally, so many regular donors, we then find out that they're legators after a while. So we steward all our legators. If somebody tells us that they're a legator, we treat them as if they were a major donor, because effectively they're going to be.
Yeah.
It's just they're giving the gift at a later stage. So it's just thanking people, just getting into that habit. And it shouldn't be a chore. It should just be an absolute instinct.
Yes.
Then so many benefits.
Yeah. And I love that idea of development thinking, and credit to Erin Charles there. And I think what it reminds me of is way back in the kind of 50s and 60s, as people were starting to understand marketing as sort of the kind of sister-in-law, if you like, of fundraising. They had a phrase called marketing orientation, and they talked about organizations that were really succeeding had a marketing orientation that suffused everything that they were doing as an organization. And I know that some of the academics have been thinking about like a fundraising orientation. How does that mean that as an organization, that might be a not-for-profit, it might be a school, how does fundraising sort of just infuse through everyone's outlook, everyone's way of thinking? And I think it may be a little ambitious to do that through the entire school, but certainly within our gift, we're trying to do that within our teams, our development teams, and at least within our senior leadership teams, so that those people, it kind of constantly thought, oh, well, shouldn't we inviting, we've got some VIP seats for this event, shouldn't we, we should definitely get the development team know about that early enough to get those invitations out. Sometimes that's the challenge, isn't it? Knowing early enough what's coming up. Exactly. But they'll think about it sort of a week before the event. But it is that kind of fundraising orientation, almost that development thinking. And if you can really kind of focus in on the stewardship side, that potentially is a great way to make people who might be a little bit more nervous, perhaps members of the senior leadership team, for example, people maybe even within your team, if they're very much alumni relations focused, they'll feel a lot more comfortable if you're asking them to be stewardship focused rather than fundraising focused.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a really nice way of looking at it, actually.
I really agree. I think I love the part of my role where I ask for money, although, as I've just explained, I don't have to ask very, very often. But I understand that a lot of people don't. and struggle with having that mindset, and it can make them feel awkward, but saying thank you, everybody can do that genuinely, and what a lovely thing to do. It's great.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our time together today, Laura, I'd love to hear your thoughts, kind of heading back up to a kind of a big picture level, your thoughts on the role of independent schools and what they should be doing with regards to social justice and social mobility within the country.
It's a huge topic, and obviously the political upheaval at the moment is really bringing it to the fore. I think that so many of our independent schools were founded upon charitable means, and they were founded as vehicles for social mobility to ensure that bright, talented children were educated or had the education and therefore the opportunities that would mean that they would meet their potential. And I think we all need to go back to those histories. And I feel like our history as a direct grant and assisted places school is one of our biggest strengths, because our alumni and donors want us to continue that work. And we hear so many stories, as I've said, from alumni who see how it's changed the trajectory of their lives. But even those schools, the vast majority of schools can make a difference to individual children, even if they don't have that historical background of being direct grant schools. And I think that it's absolutely imperative upon us that we're so lucky to work in institutions of the caliber that we do, and we should all absolutely want to expand access to them as far as we possibly can. Yeah. And I think there's a real direction of travel. It was so energizing at the IDP conference to see that the focus is firmly on bursaries and financial support for education and partnership work, and sharing the opportunities we've been given as widely as possible, because we see ourselves here at Bolton as part of the solution to that levelling up question. We know that we are doing good work, and our donors know that we are doing good work. And I think there's a real energy in the sector around expanding that work as far as we possibly can. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, it is. And there's a feeling as well, I've gathered, I think, that it's as much happening spontaneously from within the sector because it's the right thing to do, as it is being, because of the environment in which we're operating in, is politically increasingly difficult. But actually that's quite a minor thing. I don't really hear people talk about that as being the reason we're doing it. They're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
I agree entirely.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today, Laura. It's been fantastic. So anyone who wants to listen to a little bit more around Bolton School's journey and what they're doing, I'm going to put a link in the episode notes to the interview I did with Philip Britton a couple of months ago, talking about the role of bursaries within the strategy for the whole foundation for Bolton School. Thank you, Laura, for your time today. It's been really interesting to hear about your ambitions for the bursary fund, that idea of that 4 kind of stage approach of the outreach, the admissions, the pupil pastoral care and the alumni pastoral care, really good to get a sense of structure around that. And then most importantly, the role of stewardship. I mean, why wouldn't you? I think that if you can start to put this really centrally within strategy for fundraising, it's going to get people on board much more widely within your school, as well as being a really exciting and pleasant way to be spending your time. So thank you so much, Laura, for your time today.
Thank you so much, Julia. It's been so lovely to be with you.
Thanks for listening to the Independent School Podcast, the podcast that helps senior leaders in private schools to think and act more strategically, both because they want to secure the future of their school and because they want to help build a more equal and just world. You can listen in everywhere that podcasts are available. And if you want to catch up on previous episodes or follow any of the links that I've mentioned today, just head over to www.consultjuliet.co.uk/podcast.